So hello to everybody. Thanks for tuning in to how pre-LOI due diligence can create deals. You're going to get at least 135 facts, tips, and strategies to avoid mishandling the communications between business buyers, brokers, and sellers. Attending this event, we have people from, let me look at my list here. Well, first of all, we have searchers, brokers, advisors, and company owners, and they're in Australia, Spain, Norway, South Africa, Mexico, Canada, the USA, and the UK. So this is really pretty cool to know some of you are staying up all night to do this. Keep in mind, today we're only talking about pre-LOI due diligence. Let's address the biggest risk, and it's also the biggest opportunity. It's the relationships. It's the relationships among the buyers and the sellers and the brokers and the advisors and the lenders. And here's what it comes down to: likability, trustworthiness, and reasonable transparency, and proving the capability to achieve the kind of deal the parties want. That means buyers and sellers and brokers have to prove the capability they can do the deal. Now, without those kind of attributes that must be demonstrated up front and continuously nourished, it's more likely or not that your opportunity is going to crater. I don't care how motivated you are, don't care how good the deal is. Likability, trustworthiness, reasonable transparency. If it's not there, bye-bye deal. Why? Because there's buyer competition. Nobody has to put up with buyers or sellers who can't provide some of those basic human attributes. Okay, here's a spoiler alert. I'm going to use baseball as an analogy. Most searchers, well, they fail to get to first base with brokers and sellers. You see, first base is when brokers and owners eagerly talk to you because they think you're qualified and they think you're going to buy the company. You get the second base searchers if you properly handle pre-LOI due diligence. Because see, that's when the brokers and the owners, after signing that NDA, that's when they divulge that sensitive and confidential information to you. Now, former due diligence, well, that occurs after your LOI. So you do those things right. After your LOI, you get the third base. And of course, then if you know how to structure the deal and negotiate, it's a home run. Okay, enough for that analogy. I'm Ted Leverette, broadcasting from partneroncall.com. I'm the original business buyer advocate. I've been helping people worldwide for over 30 years prepare themselves and then find and buy the right businesses the right way. I'm not a business broker, never been one. Some of what we're going to cover today is more deeply explained in my books, which you can get at Amazon: How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy. And then if you have a deal on the table, How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. Okay, watch my YouTube presentation. That one, it's on the screen. Watch my YouTube presentation, Sharpen Your Search. It can help you better prepare and better impress brokers and sellers. So when I talked about the most important thing, this relationship stuff, look at the guys who helped do this show last month. Fabulous tips in there, fabulous tips. There are lots of reasons why buyers, well, we'll call them searchers, don't get to first base. It's because too many of these searchers, they're all hat and no cattle. You know, that's an American idiom, not Indian, but idiom, which means what searchers say is more impressive than what they actually possess or are able to do. If there are any brokers in this group, and I know there are right now, I know you're shaking your head. Searchers make another error besides overstating their capability. They just don't know how to market themselves to brokers and owners, which is especially important during their first interactions with brokers and what sellers. So this pre-LOI due diligence, it's a two-way street. The brokers and sellers are doing due diligence on you. Well, you're trying to assess them and the businesses for sale. And this is where opportunities crater for many searchers. They just don't make a convincing case. And that's why brokers and sellers don't take them seriously. That's why I wanted to watch this YouTube video. You know, brokers say time kills deals. Lots of potentially worthwhile deals crater because buyers and sellers prolong. They take too much time pre-LOI due diligence. Everything today is going to show you how to shorten that time or abort. The reason the time gets wasted is they're asking irrelevant questions. They're asking too many questions. They're trying to probe too deeply. And if you do those things, searchers, it's a fast way to end the conversation with sellers and brokers. They're just not going to put up with it. Keep in mind, the longer it takes to submit an LOI, the more time and the more opportunity you are giving, you are handing over to brokers and sellers to what? Bring in buyer competition. So submit that LOI as soon as reasonably possible. And the best way to do that is to know how to do it. And that's one of the most important things I do for my clients. Some of them are tuned in here, and this is the stuff we're working on. Okay, remember, time is money. Lost income opportunity, it's pretty expensive. And guess what? It's not recoverable. For example, I'm tracking 96 people who've been searching for more than 1 year. Most, nearly 2 years. All of them say they're searching for companies whose pre-tax profit is at least $500,000 or 500,000 pounds or 500,000 euros. That's at least 500,000 annually. That's 40,000 a month. 40,000 a month. That's their monthly minimum lost income opportunity. Because why? They're sitting on the sidelines. They're taking too long to get this stuff done. Be careful, please, thinking, oh, Ted, some of this information is so obvious. I knew that. You know, most mistakes buyers make are errors of omission, not commission, omission. You'll save tens of thousands of dollars and countless hours of aggravation by simply knowing what we're talking about today. But you have to remember it. Otherwise, it's an omission. So right about now, you should be building a checklist of things to remember and pitfalls to avoid. And I'm going to give you 135 of them. Probably already gave you 10. Look, the secret to handling and making big money is what? Having a plan, a proven plan, not just making it up, and then knowing how to implement it. Now, what about this thing called pre-LOI due diligence? Well, it's your first chance to see the degree to which the owner has prepared for the sale of the company. And it's better to find out early that the books and records are a mess, that the owner's advisory team doesn't have a clue. Some of these advisory teams don't have any idea how to sell a company, and a whole lot of other things that are going to come up. So you searchers need to know this right up front. One of the questions I get is, what's the goal during pre-LOI due diligence? Well, here's what I think it is. I think the goal is go or no go. In other words, to determine whether or not you'd buy the business. If later, during formal due diligence, you can what? Verify what's being told to you before the LOI. So we're really constantly thinking go, no go, start, stop, abort. Now, what about expectations? You know, remember, two-way street. It's not necessary to go too deeply into every topic and verify everything during preliminary due diligence. I know the brokers are shaking their heads. Searchers are saying, oh, well, why not? Don't worry, by the end of this, you'll know why not. Don't go too deep, because see, digging deeper and excessive verification, that's the kind of stuff that happens after the seller signs your LOI. But make it clear to brokers and sellers that you are relying on the representations made to you about the business and the terms of sale. Make it clear to them that it's not a time for them to be loosey-goosey. You're going to hold them accountable. Sellers need to know, by the way, that you, the searcher, the prospective buyer, that you have what it takes to buy and manage. So can you upfront show enough capital, cash, to handle all the financial requirements necessary, not only for the acquisition, but post-completion? And if you can't, why should they talk to you? Why should brokers and sellers talk to you? Okay, and here's a big one. To what degree is the owner motivated to sell, and why? You absolutely positively, searchers and brokers, need to know this up front. It's just not worth working on a transaction if you don't have some sense that there's motivation. You could spend money for an LOI, you could get deep in due diligence only to find out that what? There's somebody behind the scenes influencing the who? Seller. It could be a family member, employees, could be the landlord who's not going to let the lease get renewed. It's even advisors. If the seller's got lousy advisors, or maybe your broker that's just not that good, well, guess what? The motivation isn't going to be hot enough to take the risk to do the deal. One of the other things people constantly ask is, what's the scope of preliminary due diligence? You see, all of us know what the scope of formal due diligence is. Why? We can download it from the internet. It's 1,035 questions. Preliminary scope. Focus on two things: the cash flow, number one, and number two, the non-financials. Don't argue about asking prices in terms of sale. Don't get too particular about anything else unless you see a red flag. Look, if the company seems to match your criteria and it appears headed in the right direction, submit an LOI. You're going to enjoy an exclusive time to dig deeper and to try to help brokers and sellers recognize reality. You know what I mean. This is another Zoom presentation we did a while back. I think these are my most popular viewed Zoom presentations. We're talking about CIMs, confidential information memorandums. If you watch that YouTube presentation, you will know how easy it can be to set up the parameters for preliminary due diligence. These CIMs, particularly the blue, the one in the blue, it puts on the screen an example of what I think is one of the best CIMs ever written. And then we tear it apart page by page. So we pick off a few things that aren't so good. But if you just simply look at the table of contents, just that is the parameter for preliminary due diligence. And hey, if you think about it, when a broker, for example, does a CIM, he's given it to a searcher after an NDA, what? For preliminary due diligence. So we don't have to make this into some impossible to define event. By the way, if you're going to look at that, you better have a margarita or a martini. Don't do it late at night, not unless you want to have nightmares. The one in the red, this is nightmare material. This one in blue, it's mostly positive, upbeat, well worth it. Okay, so one more thing that I know buyers are constantly stepping on their own feet and they really don't need to do it. It's what are you supposed to talk about? Well, again, the CIM will show you, but there's something else. It is not realistic to expect to communicate. That means talk to, email, smoke signal, customers, employees, landlords, banks, or suppliers. You just don't get to do it. You need to submit an LOI to buy your way in to those people. So you basically have to take the seller's word for it. Whatever the seller or broker, but basically seller, tells you about customers, etc., just believe it. And if it sounds like total BS, well, then you could say, could you help me understand that? Remember, we're not trying to piss them off yet or ever. Let's look at something else here. You're looking at key performance indicators. This is a form I use. There are 20 items, 20 key performance indicators. You're looking at number 4 because it's a really huge one. It has to do with profit, particularly the continuation of profit, which somewhat relates to something like quality of earnings. It's a rating scale. We put a score, 1 to 4, or minus numbers, or maybe even 5 in that right-hand column. And then we add all those things up. And then we sort them and we see which ones get the highest score, the lowest score, what the risk factors are. Guess what? I used that form for 20 years when I ran Business Valuation Network. That was my national business appraisal practice with 98 offices around the USA and Canada. I closed that down 10 years ago when appraisal became a commodity. Back in those days, appraisal was, I thought, a better business to be in. But this is the form we used when we did appraisals to what? Determine whether a company has any value. So you might want to consider deriving something like this for yourself if you don't have it. Okay, this kind of relates to, you better understand the industry before you talk to brokers and owners. So you can't fill out a form like this. In fact, you can't really ask legitimate questions and understand answers unless what? You've done thorough research into the industry. So for some of you, I know I have them and I piss you off when I say it. When you say I'm agnostic, I'll buy anything, just show me the cash flow. That is just complete and total bullshit. You can believe that all you want, but sellers and brokers don't want to hear it. They want to hear that you're looking at taking their time because you know quite a bit about the industry, and that's why you're tempted to look at that business. I know a lot of you searchers won't do it. Guess what? Then you'll get to settle for what they give you. Now, with respect to these kind of rating scales and due diligence questions, here's a freebie. Ask your attorney, your legal counsel, for a checklist of what you'll need to convey, hand over to legal counsel as you're progressing through due diligence and deal making. Ask your accountant for the same kind of checklist. It's a different kind of checklist. Lawyer is legal, accountant is finance, basically. Oh, and ask the potential lenders. They all have checklists. Find out. It's no fun to get halfway through due diligence only to find out no lender is going to talk to you because you have something on the checklist they're not going to check off for you. Oh, and when should you get these things? Well, this afternoon. Get out of this meeting, contact your accountant, your lawyer, or lender, and say, hey, where's a checklist? I want something so I know what's ahead. Okay, now, even though you can't go really deep in pre-LOI due diligence, you can keep your ear to the ground. You can be smelling out the risks and opportunities, and that's what we're doing. Now, what about the timing? I've been sort of hinting at this. If you go too fast, you might miss some red flags. And if you go too fast, there just might not be enough time to create a healthy relationship with the seller or broker. You've got to have that relationship healthy. But if you go too slow, or if you try penetrating too deep, well, it's a good way for the sellers and brokers to lose interest in you. Bye-bye. And for buyer competition to creep in. They're right out there right now. While you're in this meeting, they're creeping around looking at what you want to look at. Okay, so what about a preview of some of the deal killers? This is what you're looking for. You're looking for red flags, pitfalls, landmines. You know, the kinds of things that most likely lead to what? A deal falling apart. Here's a big tip. Find them now in pre-LOI due diligence, or you're going to pay for them later. You're going to pay for them in time and money later if you go past an LOI and you get into due diligence. I'm gonna put off more on the deal killers to a little bit later, but don't worry, I will list them in detail. Here's another big tip. Run your initial findings and your initial evaluation, not valuation, your initial conclusions or opinions by your advisory team. Do it early. They might detect some things that you missed or show you how to handle what you discovered. And I know searchers, so many of them are do-it-yourselfers, and they don't do that because they don't want to spend $25 or $100 or $200 or $500. And so they submit an LOI and they make the broker and seller crazy. And they waste a ton of time and money only to find out that they should have not continued. And the lawyer could have told them up front that, hey, guess what? You need a license to run this kind of company. Oops. Or there are just so many things that only take minutes for lawyers and accountants, for example, to tip you off to avoid. So keeping that in mind, your goal is to either abort or quickly move forward with an LOI. Abort or quickly move forward with an LOI. But why do we submit an LOI? What's the rationale? It's the opportunity. If you strongly believe you can improve the company, that you can make it more enjoyable, more profitable, and maybe it can be a platform for more M&A, and you can see how to scale it, and you can reasonably forecast selling it for more than you pay for it, hey, that's when you submit the LOI. If you don't see those things, what's the point? Unless you want to practice, go to school on brokers and sellers. I mean, that'd be the only reason, I think, to submit an LOI and continue.
Hey, you. That's right, you. Have you been looking to buy an exciting and profitable business? Are you tired of searching, but only finding barriers that impede you from owning a wonderful business? Well, have we got some good news for you. You can find and buy the right business the right way. And you don't have to go it alone. For over 30 years, author and transaction advisor Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, has been helping buyers worldwide achieve win-win done deals. Ted Leverette says, you can't buy it if you can't find it. You see, buying a business is all about search. Because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. It's about being best and first. First on the scene with sellers and being the seller's first choice and top of mind for brokers and sellers. And most importantly, avoiding buyer competition. What about having to compete with other buyers? Well, you have to outbid them, which is a good way to pay more than a business is worth. Searchers do better with a winning business buyer marketing plan. And that's where Ted Leverette comes in. He'll help you prepare a winning plan. And then he'll guide your actions so you can find and then buy the right business the right way. But searching is not enough. The reality is too many people buy the wrong business. Or they buy the right business, but on the wrong terms. That's why, if you want to buy the right business the right way, it makes sense to have Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, on your advisory team. And one of the best ways to know what the savviest searchers and buyers do is to read Ted Leverette's books, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy, and How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. You can get them at his website, partneroncall.com. Don't chance it. Right now, go to partneroncall.com, get the books, and schedule a free and private telephone conversation with Ted Leverette.